Okay, well, welcome everyone to the Libris Collection Management Special Interest Group event, Art in the Academic Library. My name is Stephanie Fletcher. I'm the Collection Management Librarian at Trinity International University in Deerfield, Illinois, and I'm the chair of the Collection Management Special Interest Group for Libris. So in case you're not familiar with Libris, we are a consortium of 17. Okay, it's telling me that we're live. Oh, okay, we have a delay then. I started talking. Okay, well, I believe that we'll start. Amy, can you just give me a signal that we're good to go? Okay, let's see. That we're live. Sorry, that's just me. Okay. All right, we are going to continue. There's obviously a little bit of a delay to Google and YouTube. So I'll just continue. So Libris is a consortium of 17 private college and university libraries in the Chicago area. And we focus on promoting library cooperation, continuing education, networking, and sharing knowledge among our members. So this is a good time to comment on the technology we're using. We're using Google Plus to stream live to Google and YouTube. This is the first time that Libris has done an event like this, so you may notice a little bit of technical difficulties as we go along, but we're hopefully going to be able to manage that as they come up. So this also gives us a chance to archive a version of the video for people to view in the future if they can't attend the live event. So hopefully everything goes well today, and thank you in advance for your patience if anything comes up in terms of difficulties with technology. We invite everyone to comment or to ask questions along the way, and also we should have some time at the end. If you have any questions, you can use the question app in Google Plus if you're watching there to ask questions. You can also tweet and use the hashtag LibrisArt, or you can email me at sfletche@tiu.edu, and I'll try to send those questions the way of the panelists. So at this point, I'm going to turn over to our 5 panelists and allow them to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what they do at their institutions or with their work. And then after that, we'll address kind of the big question, which is how can an academic library really inspire and inform the students, faculty, and staff who are already using that space every day. You know, where is art's place in that environment? So I think we'll just start with Denise, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience, and then we'll just go from there.
Okay, my name is Denise Delgado, and I am in Miami, Florida. I currently teach as a fellow in the Honors College at Florida International University here in Miami. But before that, for 8 years, I worked with the Miami-Dade Public Library System. For 6 of those years, I was curator of art services and exhibitions. So I managed the permanent art collection and an exhibition program for the system. It's a 49-branch system with exhibitions and programming taking place in pretty much all of the libraries. And then for 2 of those years, I worked with the Vasari Project Archive, which was an archive documenting art history in Miami. So I've worked on both sides now as faculty, working with students to use art resources through an academic library on campus.
Margaret?
Hi, I'm Margaret Pizzala-Granlund, and I'm the curator of library exhibitions at Carleton College, which is a small liberal arts college in Northfield, Minnesota. I work in Gould Library, which is a campus library and is kind of a student center on campus. We do a variety of exhibitions. We show student artwork. We do exhibitions of books drawing from special collections and general collections. I also work with faculty on curricular exhibitions. One of the things I really love working in the library is that while we do lots of art exhibitions, we can also do interdisciplinary exhibitions, and they make a lot of sense in the library. There is also a museum on campus, so I do collaborate with them quite a bit, but the library program is definitely a freestanding exhibitions program that I've been here for 9 years, and it's been a lively, interesting place to work.
Thanks. Oakley?
I'm Oakley Coburn from Wofford College. This is a small liberal arts college in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I've been here for 30 years now, and my primary job, of course, is as dean, but I also wear a number of hats. I direct 3 galleries on the campus, the largest of which is in the library, but I'm in charge of the campus outdoor sculptures, service collection. A curator, I do cultural events, concerts across campus. I do budgeting for those things. But we also use the galleries for a lot of cultural events, lectures, concerts, everything from chamber music to opera. And that's been a very important thing for the life of the library as well as the college. Since we do not have a museum, basically we try to pick it all up here in the library. We do a lot like Margaret at Carleton in that we also, because we have a library gallery, we can show things from archives and our own rare books and special collections as well. And we do that about once a year.
Okay, Rachel?
Hi, I'm Rachel Beckwith. I'm the Access and Arts Librarian at Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts. And we do have an art gallery that's located in the same building as our library at Hampshire. And we also have several exhibit cases within our library, so we're always changing exhibits out that are drawn from our special collections, which I have been purchasing more and more artist books, adding to our special collections. And we also have something that's relatively new at Hampshire, which we call our Magic Board. When you enter the library building, there are 6 screens that are powered by IMAX. So we have this display showcase area for video work and media work. So all students as well as faculty and staff are able to submit their work to the Magic Board. And so that's an exhibit space that's constantly changing as well. And as I said, it's something you see right when you enter the library building.
Okay, Rita?
Good morning. Well, I'm on the lowest end of the spectrum of those who are involved with the arts in their library. Excuse me. I'm with Lenore Ryan University. I'm Rita Dursey Johnson, Dean of University Library Services in Hickory, North Carolina. And it was just this past fall that we began exhibiting student and guest art in the library. We have one display case, and in that we display our visiting writer series authors. And we have one display case outside in our foyer, and we usually show books, a few things from archives, but it hasn't been an intentional display of artistic material. So we're just getting started, and I'm hoping I will learn an awful lot from everyone here. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So I think we'd like to go ahead and start talking about kind of the question of where is your art on campus or in the library? Some of you mentioned that already. And what type of art do you have? I'm thinking especially of digital art, 2-dimensional art, 3-dimensional art. So kind of where do you display this or exhibit it, and where do you store it, and how do you make it available to your community? So if somebody would like to start us off with that.
Sure, I can start. This is Rachel here. So we, a few years ago, started a program where staff can loan certain artworks to have in their offices or office spaces. So our art collection is sort of eclectic. Hampshire College was founded in 1970, so we have a lot of alumni work, but we also have um, all sorts of things from photographs to African sculpture um, that we've acquired in various ways over the years. And so we have, we're part of the five college museum system. So the five colleges have a um, database and online space where all five college students and faculty can see all of our objects in the collection. So Hampshire College staff and faculty are able to see what we have, and they can email us if they'd like to request something that they want to have in their office. Obviously, we have limitations on that because we're not going to loan something that's of great value to offices, and we are careful about the actual space and if there's sunlight, et cetera, et cetera. But if we deem it to be acceptable, and first, some of our alumni paintings, I have two works in my office, so it's just a nice way that also obviously allows more space within our art storage space, which is just a locked space within our library building.
Well, this is Rita, and we have just a few pieces of art in the library that we have, the library has unintentionally, I think, collected over the years. There are some 4 or 5 paintings that have hung on the wall from then notable area artists, and we have about a dozen paintings from a past series that the Friends of the Library had done called Books and Brushes. And the Friends, from the years that was held, would purchase 1 or 2 paintings every year. Until September, those were displayed on the walls in the library. We have taken those down for the other exhibits that we've put up this year, and we just store those paintings, or we're storing them now, in a locked room also in the basement of the library. So the library doesn't truly have a collection that they intentionally have created.
Mm-hmm.
Our situation is a bit different in that we have a collection of about 700, and most all of those are stored within the library when they're not on display. We rotate exhibitions from that so that about every year there's at least one exhibition coming from that collection. It ranges from, Wofford was founded in 1854, so a large number of 19th century portraits. That is kind of the beginning of the collection that was in place long before I came. But we have developed a fair number of those things. I would say probably 600 of the pieces have come in as we've grown and collected during the last 25, 30 years. We do have a storage space within the building locked with racks, and that we store them when they're not on display. A number are on permanent loan in the historic homes of the president, the dean of students, the provost building, and various academic buildings. But like Rachel, we also are very careful to look at environmental conditions for these pieces there. We 25 years ago started a conservation program that began with the portraits, and that's helped us both to get some publicity for that, as well as to get to make sure that the treatment and handling is done as well as we possibly can. I would say the bulk of what we display in the gallery and the library is changing exhibitions on loan that run for about 2 months at a time. We have a kind of a special obligation, I think, for local artists, though we also do show science exhibitions as well as social sciences issues like slavery in the South and photographs from visiting, say, from the State Museum, things like that.
I could jump in and say the library at Carleton does have a collection of artwork. We have a very small collection, mostly purchases from students, some from faculty. It's kind of a catch-all collection with one exception. We have a large group of photographs of authors that's kind of a collection that was assembled as a collection to exhibit. And there are probably 50 or 60 photographs in that collection. I work really closely, as I mentioned, with the museum on campus. The Perlman Teaching Museum has its own collection. We have a memo of understanding with the museum to borrow artwork from their collection. So some of what I have on, relatively permanent display on the library comes from the library collection. Some of it comes from the museum collection. I prefer borrowing from the museum than adding to my own collection because they have better storage facilities. They're set up to catalog things. They're set up to take care of things. So I'll add student artwork occasionally if there's something that we're really excited about and that I know will be used. So for example, I bought a group of drawings from a student who'd been on a study abroad program in Australia and made these really lovely landscape drawings of Australia. That's a program that happens every 2 years, so when students are getting ready to go on that trip again, I can pull out that work and they can see the work of another student who went on the studio art trip to Australia. So I'll buy that sort of thing. If we work with an artist in residence and wind up with new work, I'll often lobby to get that in the museum collection rather than my collection because I think they're in a better position to take care of artwork than we are. Though we do have some locked storage, so I can keep things safely, but I just have really limited space in the library. So we're lucky that we have a gallery that we can work with.
The Miami-Dade Public Library System, they started collecting in the early 70s. So the collection consists of about 2,200 works of art. They're mostly works on paper. There's kind of a core artist book collection that includes artist books and publications. But most of the work is works on paper, a lot of prints, photographs, and then some unique pieces. So we would add to the collection every year. We had an acquisitions budget that kind of went up and down depending on the funding situation. A lot of work came through donations. At the time that I was there, our exhibitions program was very active. I would say that about half of our exhibitions were based on the permanent art collection, but then half of them came from either we curated them with artists or groups that were interested in exhibiting at the library. We also had a proposal program where people from the outside could propose exhibitions, and we worked with a lot of academic institutions, so a lot of schools and groups would, we had a lot of educational, sort of art education focused exhibitions. So, and we had an art storage, a large art storage room in the basement or the first floor of the library. Pretty much the same kind of climate control that was used in the other parts of the library.
Okay, yeah, thanks everyone. So here at Trinity, we have been thinking about what to do with the art that we've kind of randomly acquired, which I think some of you have experienced that at your libraries, and or doing something with student work, specifically hosting art contests and then acquiring some of those works that the students submit to us. So I think one of the questions that I would have for you is what sort of administrative involvement is there for your arts programs? Did you write policies for acquisitions? Do you work with anyone else on campus to establish those policies or to make decisions about what art you're going to put on display? Or is that something that is decided solely within the library? If anyone can comment on how it works at your institution.
We have a collection development policy that was sort of, that I revised while I was there, but that had been in place for a while, that just sort of outlined the general parameters of what the library could, what fell within the scope of our collection, what we were interested in acquiring, and then that also kind of allowed us to make decisions based on what could make sense or what we could reasonably care for. So all sort of acquisitions, our acquisitions policy and our collection development policy were basically the same thing, but that was something that was on paper and that it was done sort of in conjunction with the other with collection development, which was the art services department was under, for some reason, jurisdiction of outreach and not collections development, but we worked a lot with collections development whenever we did things with policy around the permanent art collection.
We've had a art collections committee over the years at Hampshire that has written a policy, and we did have someone several years ago come in and do an assessment of our whole collection because it had sort of grown up in various random ways. So we wanted of the whole collection at that time. But sort of continually evolving because we're still thinking about the best ways in which to make acquisition decisions. The library is separate from the gallery, so we do have a gallery coordinator, so that person is in charge of coordinating all of the exhibits, and a certain number of those are dictated throughout the year because we have student work. At Hampshire College, the students' final sort of senior thesis equivalent is called their Division III project, and so many of those take the form of artwork that gets hung in a show in our gallery. So a lot of the gallery space does go toward showing Division III student work, but there are also guest curators and various other exhibits throughout the year. So that is under the purview of the gallery coordinator. But we're still sort of continually thinking how best to make those links between the library and the gallery, as the lines have sort of blurred between those spaces, because in our case, as I said, we are physically all in the same space. And we've been thinking about designs for a learning commons, and so we really want to kind of integrate the art in the library even more. So it may evolve in terms of the art collections committee and how decisions are made about new acquisitions.
We don't have an exhibitions committee here in the library, and there has been some discussion of it, and I've resisted. I think that because there's an active museum on campus, much of what I do in the library, I think, is sort of, I want to be clear about how we're different from the museum and how the kinds of exhibitions we do in the library are different from the kinds of museum exhibitions that happen here. And one of the things about the library is that it's a much less formal exhibition space. I can do things on very short notice. I can do very small exhibitions. I can do short-term exhibitions. I can do longer-term exhibitions. And if a student comes to me with an idea, I want to feel like I can find a space in the library for them somewhere. So the idea of having, what I want to do is kind of take away barriers for students to do exhibitions. So rather than having to, propose an idea to an exhibitions committee and fill out a form, I really want to figure out ways of making the library feel accessible for students. And I actually just this week started rewriting our kind of exhibition statement on the web for students, because I realized that, probably a quarter of the policy that we have posted on the web for students who are thinking of doing exhibitions in the library was about how we're not responsible for anything, and how they need to deinstall their exhibition, and how if they don't come and pick their stuff up, we're going to throw it away. And I felt like we need to be a little more inviting to students. So I think that at least for now, and at least at Carleton, it's working well for me to try to keep an exhibitions committee at bay, and make both faculty and students feel like the library is someplace fairly simple and fairly direct. If they have an idea for an exhibition, they know who they can talk to, and they know that it's a matter of having a conversation about what they're interested in doing, and we can figure out a way to do it.
We've gone in a bit of a different direction. We have 2 more formal galleries or 3 that I administer. We rarely show student work within either of these galleries. There's one exception. We have one student who receives a fellowship. It's a competitive fellowship to work each summer, and with an exhibition coming out of that. The less formal of the galleries is just off the Student Center, and so that's where that exhibition is held. There are 2 other gallery spaces where on the campus student work is shown, and that's very regularly. One of those is administered by a group of students who set their own schedule, and it shares space with a game room just off the Student Center. The other is coordinated by the art faculty, and so I'm simply a happy observer in those cases. But for us, we have to work about a year or 2 ahead of time to be assured of a schedule, because we're showing things from, say, collectors. Recently we had a very large, magnificent collection of Dutch Baroque art. And so that's the kind of thing that takes a fair amount of prep work. And I agree with you, Margaret, about the need for student space. And those can happen very quickly, but if we also market to the community outside the college as well. And we try to show things that are, as much as we can, linked to the academic programs here. And so, for example, when that Baroque collection was on display, the art history course in the Baroque period during that semester, each student was assigned to choose one painting from the exhibition for both the research paper and then an oral report, and that was given as a public event within the gallery itself. And so that kind of integration takes a lot more lead time than student exhibitions would. So we've kind of shifted into a 2-part system here on the campus at Wofford.
As I mentioned, this is Rita, at Lenora Ryan's library, we just started our art exhibit program this past fall. I had wanted to have student art exhibited in the library, but had not made really good efforts to do that. We had a new art program coordinator start this fall. He was introduced at our August faculty meeting, and I went up to him after, introduced myself, and mentioned that I was interested in having student art in the library. he was very enthusiastic, and within a month we had an art exhibit in the library. We decided, Clay and I, James is the program director, that we would co-sponsor all of these exhibits, and that because of the way the art classes are structured, student art would be shown in the spring when students had completed works, and we'd have a guest artist in the fall, and possibly one or more in the spring as well. So our first display was of local artist work, and this spring we had a local potter exhibit along with two of our art students. We said we would try it this year, see what happened. We kept it very simple. The students take care of all of the work, the art students, so I'm not involved in that at all. I have an exhibits policy that I had used at other institutions, and Clay and I looked it over, reviewed it, and revised it to reflect this current situation. I don't have an acquisitions policy. There isn't an art committee. It never occurred to me to have an acquisitions policy because I didn't expect to acquire anything. As I said at the beginning, I'm hoping to learn a lot, and now I've learned I ought to do that. It just occurred to me that we were given an art piece from Andrew Adkin, our first artist, and this spring we were given a piece of pottery by Cindy Douglas, our guest potter artist, and I need to do something with them besides just have them out. So I will be working on that. The art administration isn't involved in this program at all. I talked to my provost before we started. He was supportive of that, and he signed our exhibits policy. He signs all of the policies. So that's where we are right now.
Okay, thank you. So Oakley mentioned marketing in his comments, and that's something that I want to ask about. How do you publicize events in your library? How do you market to students and also to the broader community around your institution? And is that something that the librarians do? Is that something that the students do if it's their work that's on display? If anyone can comment on that, I'm interested to hear.
This is Rita. I'll start. As I said, this is our first year. We decided, Clay and I, we'd keep it simple. So we simply publicize the exhibits that we're having on the university's student news feed, and we have the students and the guest artists do their own publicity to the community. That seems to have satisfied these two guest artists, but I can see in the future getting our marketing department involved so that we can have more and more public outreach about our programs and our displays.
I think for us, outreach is more of an issue than marketing. If I only work part-time, so I have great intentions of doing wonderful marketing of all the great exhibitions we're doing, but that's pretty far down on my list. What has been really important for my program is outreach to the campus. I've learned a lot from the librarians. I work closely with the research or the reference and instruction librarians here, and what I've learned from them is working with faculty and kind of staying on top of what faculty are doing, what their research interests are, what they're teaching. So if I know someone is teaching an environmental justice class next winter, for instance, I can say, listen, I heard about these really interesting photographs from the EPA. Can we do an exhibition during your class? And would your students use an exhibition of EPA photographs from the 1970s? And sure enough, they were interested. So for me, the way to get faculty and students involved in the exhibitions at the library is making sure I know what's going on campus, making sure I know what courses are happening, and making sure that faculty and students know that if they're interested in bringing an artist to campus, or if they're screening a film, or if they're researching something and they're using library materials or things in special collections, one of the things that they can think about is putting the library resources on display in the library during the course. So for us, outreach is key.
Outreach is really also important in the kind of stuff we did, and I've been trying to figure out if I can show. I see that on the side of the screen there's like, you can show stuff on your screen, or this is the first time I do a Google Hangout, so I'm just trying to figure out how this works, if I can show you an example of something. But we really, especially whenever we worked with groups of artists or student groups, we had kind of a boilerplate, like a letter of understanding that we would give to them, and just sort of like a set of, kind of standard things for them to be of guidelines. So that whenever we had groups of artists or groups of students propose an exhibition or do a project with us, and it was accepted, that they would be aware of what was expected of them as well in order to do the project. So we really stressed that in order to make sure that they had a good audience for their exhibition, that they also be involved with promoting it and inviting people and getting the word out. So we did that through we had an email list that we would send out email announcements. We used Facebook a lot towards the last few years that I was there to try to take advantage of social media, especially to promote exhibitions to the art community. So I think what really made it successful was when whoever was exhibiting was really actively involved with also doing outreach and also promoting their exhibition. So I'm trying to show you an example of an exhibition that was done by a faculty member from Miami-Dade College. Miami-Dade College used to be a community college and has since grown to be more of like it's a 4-year college now. It's a really large college with multiple campuses, and the one that was closest to where our service department was also in downtown Miami, where the main library was and where our department was, where our offices were located. So we tried to keep really active relationships with the art department at Miami-Dade College, also New World School of the Arts, which is also nearby. So we often got to do really cool stuff with both of those departments, but there was a particular project called Forest.
Denise, if you click on the green screen, you should be able to share your screen with us.
Okay, let's see.
There's a green screen on the left-hand side.
Yeah, I can see it. I'm just trying to make sure my screen is like okay to be shared. Let's see. Okay. Oh, cool. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
So, so this is an example of what they came up with. It was just a simple card that they produced, and so it was a group of students and an art teacher from a drawing class that actually came up with the idea of doing an exhibition where they would in turn put out a call to artists to create images identical to the one that you see in the invite. And it started because they were having conversations in class around the idea of the original and the copy and readings that they were doing. So they basically put the whole exhibition together. We facilitated it. People could drop off could submit paintings by dropping them off at locations that we set up in various libraries, and then we worked with them to install it, and they did a panel discussion. So to me, it's kind of an example of a project that was especially successful, and that students and faculty from a nearby college were really active with promoting the exhibition, both as they were organizing it, and then to get people to come out to the opening and come to the panel discussion.
We do marketing and publicity in a number of ways. We print mailers and mail out. We generally print about 2,500 cards or mailers. Sometimes these are foldovers. We also promote them on social media. The library has its own Facebook page, and we have an informal student-driven one that we oftentimes, since my student assistant created that, his reaches a good bit more in a different audience than our own. We create web pages that are linked both to the library page as well as to the campus culture and art page. I do press release drafts. I get those to the communications office there. A weekly email blast goes out to a list of people both on campus and off campus in the community that want to know about things happening there. Generally, we do an opening reception on campus. The daily announcement, the electronic daily announcement goes out to all of our students, and that's linked to their online account as well. We also have a web-based art tour of the college collections as well, and so it is time-consuming, but it helps us to get folks from off campus. We do the mailers in part to just make sure that we're making an outreach to typical donors, to the Friends of the Library here. So we do kind of double whammy on those people. In some cases, I've never met these people, but they continue to stay in touch with us because they may live in California, but because they get these regular emails and or print mails from us about exhibitions and events like that, it has benefited the library in a more general way.
So I can now say that this sounds, a lot of what we do at Hampshire is now similar to what Oakley and Denise are doing in terms of social media. We have a library Facebook page as well that links out to our Twitter page. We have a library blog, so when we have exhibits in the cases within the library, we always post something to our blog about that and all the social media. We are fortunate in terms of our gallery space that, again, because we are part of the 5 colleges, which is part of a larger group called Museums 10, that we get a lot of our marketing kind of done for us through that group. So there is a Museums 10 website, and so that gallery coordinator kind of relays all of the exhibit schedules for what's going on in the gallery, and then we get, you know, postcards and mailers and all of that sort of glossier, nicer looking advertising that comes through Museums 10. And we, for student shows, you know, we do a combination. Sometimes we have students who want to show their work in the library cases and they already have ideas about how to promote it themselves, so we let them run with it. But other times, if they're too busy or not interested, then we kind of take over that part and would always do a blog post, as I said, and the Facebook and Twitter.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to just touch a little bit on what you think the biggest challenges or limitations to your programs are. We've talked a lot about what you all do for the students and how you can do outreach with them and invite them to display their works in your library or elsewhere on campus. But what are the challenges of your job, and what are things that you would like to do but you find that sometimes you can't accomplish them?
For what I found was, and even though I was in a public library, it may be, this may be a common problem just to curators and arts professionals working in libraries, that they're just, our department was really tiny, so it was me and 2 other full-time people. and we were responsible for working system-wide. And often there wasn't necessarily a lot of institutional support or understanding for what, the sort of standards and, the kind of standards and requirements that we were working with, or, just sort of things that were specific to handling artwork or working with artists. It required a lot of educating up, and because a lot of our recurring processes were so different, sometimes the same, but so different in many ways than those of other library departments or librarians who are working with different kinds of collections or more traditional book-based collections. Sometimes I found that to be a struggle, just having to kind of advocate to get the kind of funding we needed, or advocate for getting the kinds of tools that we needed to do our jobs. That was something that I found challenging.
I'm very fortunate at this point that working with our exhibits has not taken up very much of my time at all. Starting out in a small way, a simple way, has helped. Having had an existing exhibits policy has helped. I didn't have to spend much time refining that. I can see, though, and I appreciate hearing about, the various areas that will require work as this program gets to be larger and has perhaps more outreach to it. But right now, the time is not a problem for me.
I think for us, probably others would share this concern that often storage and preservation can be definitely a concern. Just when making a decision about whether or not to acquire work, we always need to make sure that we can store it properly, obviously, and that we have the funds to care for it in the future, because we've had several paintings now that we've owned long enough that they needed some conservation work, and so funding's always a challenge, and making sure that when things need to get to be sent out to be framed or to be conserved, that once we agree to acquire something, that we can then make sure that we can properly care for it, and storage space is a concern. It's we have a relatively small storage space right now that's humidity controlled, that we kind of redid several years ago, but I still think that's not going to be the permanent long-term solution. As our collection grows, we're going to need other storage solutions.
I'd echo Rachel's comments. Storage and conservation are incredibly important, especially with older works. And in many cases, these were simply parts of the collection here that had been neglected for decades before I came. And so one of the most useful things we did was to have a preservation assessment of the collection done, and that began about 25 years ago. But like Rita was saying, though, the amount of time is certainly been a problem for me because of the amount of time it has begun to take. And in fact, when I retire at the end of the month, the plans are to split my duties into a deanship, as well as, and plans are underway to hire a separate cultural events coordinator and curator, and that should make the program go much better than I've been able to do it, trying to split my time that way. Mostly it's simply been done with a lot of weekend work and overtime.
I'd agree that time is certainly an issue, and I think that the impact of not having enough time kind of manifests itself in it's hard to take on longer term projects, it's harder to take on really large projects, and it's hard to do those kinds of things like exhibit documentation that are kind of, you know, the last on your list of things that you want to do for an exhibition. So what I've been working on over the past year is to figure out a way to document our exhibitions better so that when we do research a book in special collections or do an exhibit of our artist books, that the images are somewhere where people can find them, the information is somewhere where people can find them, because people do visit the library website and we know that people are looking at our exhibitions online. So I really want our exhibits to be more visible even after the exhibit has already happened. And the other thing that I would like to be able to do more of are kind of these projects that take a little bit more funding and a little bit more lead time and a little bit more collaboration with academic departments. Like I'm working now on bringing in an artist in residence. We've done a couple artist residencies. And I think they're great for the library, they're great for the students, but they do take maybe a little bit more work than I think I have time for. So, but I think they're great for the library. So.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, I do want to open up to any questions that the viewers might have. And we do have one already, which was a question on my list, so I'm glad that it was asked. The question is, do you have a relationship with the art department on campus? Some of you, I believe, have commented about this, but if you could elaborate a little bit, that would be great. And then do you have any work from art faculty as part of your collection? And how do you determine what belongs? If anybody who has, you know, that situation at the library can comment on that.
We started our program this year, and it's because of the support of the coordinator of our art programs. If he had not been as enthusiastic about this and as supportive in helping us and doing all of the work to contact the artists and the students, I don't know that this program would have taken off. So we have a very close relationship with the art department. I hadn't thought about asking our art faculty to display their works. So that's something that we may do in the future.
We do at Hampshire, I should have mentioned earlier, in addition to always reserving space for Division III student exhibits every year, we also do have an annual faculty and staff exhibit in our gallery. We have a lot of staff who are artists as well as faculty. And I, as the Access and Art Librarian, I try to kind of be the liaison between the studio arts faculty and the library and the gallery. So I have definitely tried to solicit certain faculty to have exhibits of their own work within the library. We have done that before in our exhibit cases, and others have been had their work projected on our magic board. And I think in terms of acquiring faculty work, I have purchased work by certain faculty. At Hampshire, our curriculum changes every semester. It's very dynamic and very interdisciplinary, and faculty are constantly changing the courses that they teach. So I just try to keep abreast of what's being taught. And so, for example, when I had a book arts class, recently I purchased a pop-up book that one of our studio arts faculty had made herself because I knew it would be used in the classes that we teach. So I try to, when I do make purchases like that, I really try to buy things that, you know, aren't going to just sit on a shelf and never be seen again. I love to pull them out for classes and to encourage other faculty to use them and invite their students to come. And so I've had lots of classes where I kind of pull out all of our artist books or all of our photography collection, etc.
I do work with the art faculty on campus. There are a few classes that I know happen every year, like there's a field drawing class that always results in really beautiful drawings of insects generally, and I usually exhibit those each year. But I have to say that I work as much with some other departments on campus, especially the history department. I've probably done, I don't know, 8, 10 exhibitions with faculty from the history department, in part because they use materials from special collections. So, and just because there's faculty in the history department that are really interested in the idea of public history and see curricular exhibitions as a way of getting their students involved with public scholarship. I've also done a couple of exhibitions with the math department. Actually, I've done 3 things with the math department now that I think about it. Mathematicians are surprisingly interested in the visual, so it's nice to work with them.
We work with the faculty and very, very often, in fact, both in terms of building the collections that might be most useful for them. For example, when we began teaching Asian art history, we were in a position to buy a collection of Asian artifacts that serve as a resource for them. We've done the same thing with building a small collection of African art, tribal art. And I have, in fact, when I've discovered something, worked with the art history faculty who teach the course to make sure that this is, in fact, both authentic and useful for them, but both from the tribal culture to expand what they can do. Currently, for example, several pieces, a dozen or so pieces from the African collection that the library's built are on display within the art history department in another building on the campus. Last week I attended a program in which the students had to create their own research and identify these pieces as to where they came from, how they might have been used. And so it was hung on the collection gallery wall there with no labels, but the students had to do the research. Sometimes there were errors, I could tell. But nevertheless, it involved them in a very significant way, and it integrated what we're doing across the campus and in different ways like that. Our studio art program is very recent, and so we don't have a program of buying at this point from the studio art faculty, though we have shown their work on average about once every 2 years, a solo show for one of the professors there.
Okay, we do have another question here. Have you had to deal with born digital artwork in your collection? And if so, how have you decided to manage it? Another question that we're thinking about here at Trinity when we look at our digital collection. So if anyone can comment on that.
For us, no. Our gallery is so centrally located within the building that sound especially would be difficult to do. And it's just simply a limitation of the space.
We had some digital video work in the collection. We didn't have a lot of, just because of not really having the capacity to collect it or not having a really comprehensive policy for dealing with it. We did not have a lot of born digital work in the collection, but we did have digital video, and that we just put on DVD. You know, had a hard copy of it, which is not a very sophisticated way to deal with born digital artwork, but that was our solution at the time.
We've exhibited video, but we don't collect video. And I work with we have a PEPS department, which I think stands for presentation and something, but like they're the people who set up monitors and computers, and they've been really, really great about helping us do exhibitions of video work in the gallery. And generally, I mean, not always, I've done a few artist videos, but generally it's students who do a video as part of a larger exhibition.
I'd be very interested to hear more about the iMac installations that you have.
Oh, our magic board at
Yes.
Hampshire
Yes.
College. Fortunate at Hampshire to have a whole media services department, so they kind of run the magic board. Submissions are sent to them. There's an email specifically, magicboard@hampshire.edu, and so they make those curatorial decisions. There's a group of kind of the magic board committee. We do also have at Hampshire a lot of old video and film, 16 millimeter reels, and all kinds of film and video that need preservation. So there is also a 5-college group that's kind of looking at digital preservation, the larger picture. So it's something we're still working on. But we do, have we have certain things on YouTube, Hampshire YouTube. We have some podcasts that we've recorded of like writers reading in the library series, for example, and those are available on iTunes and archived that way. So it very much depends on the format, but it's definitely a question that we're looking at for the future in terms of having a more cohesive digital repository where Hampshire student work could live. We do. It's something. For Division III work in Hampshire, we do encourage students to submit their final projects, and we do accept them in various formats. So that is something that we have used DSpace for, but it's probably, again, something we will look at for the future in terms of better platforms to store and preserve those born digital objects.
Do we have any more questions out there? I don't see any more coming up in Google here. Okay, well, looks like we've answered the questions, and at this point I'll just close out our conversation. So I want to say thank you to our panelists, and thank you for your time and your effort that you put into thinking about this topic and preparing for the event today. Thanks to Libris and to Amy, who helped us get everything up and running, and to my colleagues who helped me test this out a couple times over the past week or so. And this video will be available on the Libris YouTube site, archived after today. So we do hope that if anybody wants to come back to it, or if they want to share it with their colleagues or friends, that the viewership on that YouTube video will grow. And just thank you everyone for participating and for thinking about this question about art in academic libraries, and how we can use our resources to encourage students to enjoy our spaces and participate in art in the library. So thank you everyone, and I'm going to end our broadcast now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.